You wake up, you go to work, you come home, you sleep, you wake up again, same thing tomorrow, and the day after that. And you're supposed to believe this matters? Here's what they never tell you about searching for meaning in life. It doesn't exist. And once you understand why, everything changes. There's a French philosopher named Albert Camus who figured something out that most people spend their entire lives avoiding. He realized that we're all stuck in the most ridiculous situation imaginable. We're creatures who desperately need life to have meaning, living in a universe that couldn't care less about us. We're asking for answers from a world that will never respond. And that gap between what we want and what we get, that's what Camus called the absurd. But here's the twist. He didn't think this was a reason to give up. He thought it was the key to actually living. Let me paint you a picture of what happens in your mind when you're lying in bed at 3 a.m. You start thinking about your life. Really thinking about it. You've been working this job for 5 years. You've been in this relationship for 2. You've been following the same routine, the same schedule, Monday through Sunday, watching the weeks blur together. And suddenly this question hits you like a punch to the chest. What's the point of any of this? You tell yourself you're working towards something. A promotion, a house, retirement. But then what? You get those things and then you die anyway. You love people, you build memories, you try to leave something behind. But everyone you know will die too. Everything you create will eventually crumble. The universe is billions of years old and will last billions more, and your entire existence is a microscopic blip that won't even register. This is the feeling Camus was obsessed with. This moment when you look at your life and see it for what it really is. A temporary struggle in an indifferent universe. You want your life to matter. You want there to be some grand purpose, some ultimate meaning that makes all the suffering worth it. You want the universe to care about your pain, your joy, your existence. But it doesn't. It never has. It never will. And this creates what Camus calls the absurd. The absurd isn't just the universe being meaningless. It's a collision between two things. On one side, you have this deep human need for clarity, for purpose, for answers to the big questions. Why am I here? What should I do with my life? What happens when I die? On the other side, you have a universe that offers nothing but silence. Cold, empty, unreasonable silence. Think about it. Every single system of meaning we've ever created. Every single system of meaning we've ever created. Every religion, every philosophy, every political movement is just us screaming into the void, hoping something screams back. And nothing ever does. We build these elaborate structures of belief to convince ourselves that we matter. But there's a plan that it all adds up to something. But deep down, if we're honest, we know we're just making it up as we go dots, so what do you do with this realization? This is where most philosophical discussions would either comfort you with lies or crush you with despair. But Camus takes a different path. He says there are basically 3 ways people respond to the absurd, and only one of them is actually worth pursuing. The first response is suicide. And Camus opens his most famous essay, The Myth of Sisyphus, with this line that hits like a brick: there is only one really serious philosophical problem, and that is suicide. He's saying, look, if life truly has no meaning, if we're just going to suffer and struggle and then die, why keep going? Why not just end it now? This is the most logical response to absurdity, right? If the game is rigged and you can't win, why keep playing? But Camus rejects this. He says suicide doesn't solve the absurd, it just runs from it. Without humans, the absurd can't even exist. The absurd needs both sides of the equation, the meaning-seeking human and the meaningless universe. If you remove yourself, you're not conquering the absurd, you're just proving you couldn't handle it. You're letting the meaninglessness win. The second response is what Camus calls philosophical suicide. This is when you make a leap of faith. You decide to believe in God, or karma, or some cosmic plan that makes everything make sense. You convince yourself that even though you can't prove any ultimate meaning exists, You're going to believe in it anyway because it feels better than facing the truth. No, Camus isn't trying to be cruel about this. He understands why people do it. It's terrifying to accept that the universe doesn't care about you, that there's no cosmic justice, no divine plan, no guarantee that good things happen to good people or that your suffering serves some higher purpose. So people create these safety nets of belief. They tell themselves that everything happens for a reason, that they'll be rewarded in the afterlife, that the universe is ultimately benevolent. But Camus sees this as intellectual cowardice. It's replacing one absurdity with another. You're trading the honest absurdity of existence for the dishonest comfort of delusion. You're killing your reason, your ability to face reality as it is, because reality is too painful to bear. And in doing that, you're not really solving anything. You're just hiding from the problem dot. So if you can't escape through physical death, and you shouldn't escape through intellectual death, what's left? This is where Camus introduces his third option, and it's the one that changes everything. Revolt. But revolt here doesn't mean what you think it means. Camus isn't telling you to start a revolution or burn down society. He's talking about something more personal, more profound. He's talking about looking the absurd directly in the face and saying, I see you. I know you're there. I know life has no inherent meaning. I know the universe doesn't care. And I'm going to live anyway. I'm going to live fully, passionately, defiantly, in spite of all of that. This is rebellion at its purest. You're not rebelling against a government or a person. You're rebelling against the fundamental nature of existence itself. You're acknowledging that the universe is meaningless and then choosing to create meaning anyway. Even though you know it's not real, even though you know it won't last, even though you know it ultimately doesn't matter, and this is where the absurd hero comes in. To explain this, Camus reaches back to Greek mythology and pulls out one of the most tragic figures ever imagined. Sisyphus? You probably know the story. Sisyphus was a king who cheated death, who outsmarted the gods, who thought he could escape his fate. And for his arrogance, the gods punished him in the most cruel way they could imagine. They condemned him to roll a massive boulder up a mountain for all eternity. Every single day, he pushes this rock to the top, his muscles burning, his back breaking, sweat pouring down his face. And just when he's about to reach the summit, the boulder rolls back down to the bottom. And he has to start over again and again, forever. Most people hear this story and think it's about punishment, about futility, about the ultimate nightmare. But Camus sees something completely different. He sees the perfect symbol of human existence. And more than that, he sees the perfect hero. Think about it. What's your life but a series of tasks that ultimately lead nowhere? You work all week to earn money to survive so you can work another week. You clean your house knowing it will get dirty again. You eat knowing you'll be hungry in a few hours. You build relationships knowing everyone will eventually leave or die. You create things knowing they'll be forgotten. You struggle against aging knowing you'll lose. Everything you do is Sisyphean. You're pushing your own boulder up your own mountain, watching it roll down, and pushing it up again. But here's what Camus realizes. The moment that matters most isn't when Sisyphus is pushing the boulder up. It's when he's walking back down the mountain. That moment of consciousness when he sees the boulder at the bottom and knows he has to do it all over again. That's when Sisyphus becomes fully aware of his fate. And that's when he becomes free. Because in that moment of awareness, Sisyphus has a choice. He can despair. He can curse the gods. He can hate his existence. Or he can do something radical. He can accept it. Not with resignation, but with rebellion. He can say, this is my rock. This is my mountain. This is my fate. And I'm going to keep pushing anyway, not because it leads somewhere, but because the pushing itself is my life. Camus writes this line that will stick with you. One must imagine Sisyphus happy. And this isn't some joke or some cruel irony. Camus genuinely believes Sisyphus can be happy. Because happiness in the absurd world doesn't come from achieving some ultimate goal or finding some ultimate meaning. It comes from the struggle itself. It comes from living fully in each moment, from embracing the process rather than obsessing over the outcome. Now let's be clear about what Camus is not saying. He's not saying you should be happy about meaninglessness in some shallow, optimistic way. He's not saying everything's fine and nothing matters, so just relax and enjoy life. That's nihilism wearing a smile. That's giving up. The difference between Camus' absurdism and nihilism is crucial. Nihilists say life has no meaning, so nothing matters, so why bother? They collapse into apathy. They stop caring. They let the meaninglessness drain all the color from life. But Camus says the opposite. He says, yes, life has no inherent meaning, and that's exactly why you should live it to the fullest. Because if there's no cosmic scorekeeper, no ultimate judgment, no grand plan, then you're completely free. Free to create your own meaning. Free to live by your own values. Free to find joy in the struggle itself. This is what Camus means by the three consequences of the absurd: revolt, freedom, and passion. You revolt against the meaninglessness by refusing to accept it as an excuse to give up. You embrace your freedom by recognizing that without predetermined meaning, you can choose your own path. And you live with passion by squeezing every drop of experience out of life, by being fully present, by refusing to sleepwalk through your existence. The absurd hero isn't someone who finds meaning. The absurd hero is someone who stops looking for it, who accepts that meaning is something we make, not something we find, who understands that the point of life isn't to arrive somewhere, because there is nowhere to arrive. The point is to be alive right now in this moment, even though it's temporary, even though it will end, even though it doesn't fit into some grand cosmic plan dot. So what does this actually look like in practice? How do you become an absurd hero in your own life? It starts with honesty, brutal, uncomfortable honesty. Stop lying to yourself about why you do things. Stop pretending your job has cosmic significance or that your routine is building towards some grand revelation. Look at your life as it actually is. Repetitive, temporary, absurd. Feel the weight of that. Let it hurt, but then, and this is the crucial part, don't let that awareness destroy you. Let it free you, because once you accept that nothing you do has ultimate meaning, you're no longer burdened by the pressure to make everything meaningful. You can just live. You can work at your job without needing it to be your purpose. You can love people without needing that love to be eternal. You can create things without needing them to last forever. You become like Sisyphus walking down the mountain, aware, conscious, present. You see the rock at the bottom and you think, here we go again. And instead of despair, you feel something else. Maybe not happiness in the traditional sense, but something close, acceptance, defiance, a strange kind of joy that comes from knowing you're choosing this. You're choosing to push the boulder even though you know it's pointless. And that choice, that rebellion, that's where your humanity lives. This is what separates you from the rock you're pushing and the mountain you're climbing. The universe is mechanical and different, meaningless. But you're not. You're aware. You feel. You suffer. You struggle. And in that struggle and that conscious choice to keep going despite knowing the truth, you find something more authentic than any meaning the universe could have handed. You, the absurd hero, doesn't need the gods to give their life purpose. They don't need religion to tell them what matters. They don't need society to validate their existence. They stand in the face of a silent, uncaring universe, and they choose to care anyway. They choose to love anyway. They choose to create anyway. They choose to push their boulder anyway. And there's a strange power in that. A freedom that people who still believe in ultimate meaning will never know. Because when you stop waiting for life to make sense, when you stop expecting the universe to reward you, When you stop believing that suffering serves some higher purpose, you can finally just be here. Right now. In this moment, which is all you ever really had anyway. Look, this isn't an easy philosophy to live by. It's much more comfortable to believe that everything happens for a reason, that there's a plan, that your pain is meaningful. Most people will choose that comfort over Camus' brutal honesty. And maybe that's okay. Maybe some people need those beliefs to keep going. But if you're someone who can't unsee the truth once you've seen it, if you're someone who feels the absurdity in your bones and can't go back to pretending everything's fine, then Camus offers you something valuable. Not comfort, but courage. Not meaning, but freedom. Not happiness in the traditional sense, but something more real. You're Sisyphus. We're all Sisyphus. We're all pushing rocks up mountains that we'll never conquer, living lives that will end, creating things that will fade. But we're also conscious. We're also aware. We're also capable of looking at our absurd fate and choosing to embrace it rather than run from it. So push your boulder. Not because it will lead somewhere. Not because the gods are watching. Not because it builds towards some ultimate meaning. Push it because it's yours to push. Because the struggle itself, the act of being alive and aware and defiant in the face of meaninglessness, that's as close to meaning as we're ever going to get. Camus ends the myth of Sisyphus with these words: "The struggle itself toward the heights is enough to fill a man's heart." One must imagine Sisyphus happy. And maybe, just maybe, we can imagine ourselves happy too. Not because we found the meaning of life, but because we stopped needing to find it. If this changed how you see things, there's more where that came from.